But it's Takeover Target grabbing the lead. He is a sprinting champion. Takeover Target beat Gold Edition and Apache Cat.
20 years I've lived trying to find who my creator was, but now at last the pieces fall in place.
Apache Cat and Black Piranha. Apache Cat's just in front. Apache Cat.
And the music goes round my head, and I can't hear a thing you said.
Temple of Boom and Spirit of Boom. They hit the line and Spirit of Boom got up and won the 10,000.
Giga Kick on the outside, trying hard. Late as Marzu, knuckling down. Giga Kick now takes over late in. Giga Kick's won the 10,000.
To hear what I will say, it's funny and they carry me away, and the music goes round my head, and I can't.
Down the outside is Espiona, also Bella Nipotina and Private Eye down the outside. I wish I win Bella Nipotina. I wish I win Bella Nipotina. They hit the line. Oh, it's a bobbing photo.
And now Sunshine in Paris, given a cue, is coming right down the outside. Rothfire's in front. Sunshine in Paris is trying hard. Rothfire and Sunshine in Paris. Sunshine in Paris dropped the lead and won.
And now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphy.
Some of the past 10,000 winners at Doomben via the Saints, great Brisbane band, of course, and all that audio courtesy of Sky Racing. Thanks so much for being a year-round carnival customer before tomorrow's big Doomben 10,000 meeting. We've got a heavy track. Where'd that rain come from, Vince Accardi from Daily Sectionals? Morning, mate.
They haven't been doing the proper dances to say no rain dance, no rain dance. They're just not doing it.
No, absolutely right. No, I heard an interview with Kelly Schweeder on Gareth Hall yesterday, and he said no rain was expected at his stage, and then it just kept on bucketing down. So anyway, wasn't predicted, but that's what we got. And in a way, Vince, I guess what we've got, and via your reports as well, please open it up and have a look at it while we go through the meeting. At least we've got a bit of certainty with the track conditions.
We have, and the other good positive is that I don't feel like there is a little bit of a drizzle showing or a little bit of light rain on race day, but it's going to be on the minor end. It's not going to be on the major end. And the other thing is with this track, well, I particularly Doomben, if there is a bit of rain during the day, the track's not going to completely fall apart, which is really important, and therefore we can have confidence. If we're dealing with horses that are, genuine slow trackers, slash heavy, we're going to be fine.
Well, I enjoyed doing this card. There's a fair bit of depth to it. We'll start with the Group 1, the Doomben 10,000, and I guess it's quite a decent-sized field at this stage. Private Eye, Devil Knight, Lady of Camelot. Can you believe that? Bitten by a stingray, Vince. Out of the field, as well as a bounding, but we've still got a decent-sized field for a tight track like Doomben, 15 runners. And how are you expecting the pace to unfold?
This is the sprint race you're talking about?
Yeah, race 8.
Well, I know we've got to allow for the ground conditions, but the pace is going to be on. It's not going to be slow. And when I say it's going to be on, I don't believe we're going to go plus 5, 6 because of the ground conditions, but we're going to be more like benchmark plus 2, 3, which is plenty of speed for a setup like this, even if we're on slow 7, H8.
So the likes of Zarastro highballing. You've got Jimmy Star on top. Now, I suppose the question is, what type of speed do you think he can have back in his legs, 1,400 back to 1,200 here?
We are 28 days, so there's no question they'd understand how to have this horse freshened up for a scenario like this. So I personally didn't mark it as a negative. The only factor that I considered was, one, probably no expectation to see the horse hard up on there, up near that lead pack, or just stalking it, unless there's some unbelievable bias that's transforming during the day that's outside the norm and you need to be there. And the second part is, Ralphie, I actually feel like it becomes an edge. Let's just come back to over the years when you've talked about it, when you're on genuine heavy ground as an example. That's how I'm treating it at the moment. Fitness is very important. I don't know if you want to be in a race like this, say, first up, or maybe second up, because it might detract from your overall performance for your conditioning because you're not going to be rock hard fit. So speed's not everything in this race.
So he's got the real class edge. I'm looking at, what past 2 years, I think he's got the top 6 performances in the race. So that's a pretty good amount of depth. He's yet to win this time in. Everything points to it being circumstantial. First up at Caulfield, the track was horrendous. He was stuck in the inside in the TJ Smith. He was smashed early. Ethan Brown clearly has changed that horse's tactics around, but unfortunately, if you get smashed out of the stalls, no, there's just no chance. And then that Randwick all-age run, I don't think he could have done any much more from the way the track was playing and how fast Beowak was going up front.
Yeah, and really, as you're right, Ralphie, and that last run was a real big signal. Even though we've been getting little signals, that was a big one. 4.8 below early, plus 2.9 in the mid, huge last 400, plus 7.1. A solid trend up with a plus 2.9 IVR figure. The race matrix indicating around 3.1. So it's like right in that perfect pocket to test the next level. And we know this horse is very capable to run low fours, mid fours, maybe even high fours. This is IVR benchmark wise, and this is it. This is the right scenario. Now, how much are we going to allow or potentially detract from a ground condition point of view in terms of how far can you stretch to that ceiling, or is it not going to be a problem? Right now, I'm just sitting here saying trend. You look set to run mid to high threes. Going to be super hard to beat regardless.
Well, it's a pretty serious benchmark. Grafter Burners, I suppose what we can do is Devil Knight's out of the race, so it ran second to Tempted, who's arguably the best sprinter in the country, and Grafter Burners first up third. I don't think it could have done it much more. It's got Zach Burton on, so there's a dual question here. How close do you think it's going to go? Because if the market likes it as well, with the Whirlpool in action, I don't think the 550 is going to last, to be honest.
Well, yeah. On the last run, if you were just looking pure intel based on last start performances, obviously Jimmy Star versus, say, Grafter Burners, there's not much between them. The question is this: what can we expect from Grafter Burners to go above in terms of the 2.7? Now, when I look at the actual data points, there's not a lot of room to move. I felt the mid-race move at Randwick was a high extension, plus 6.7. The early speed, when you look at that, minus 1.2 in isolation, even though it's only had a short career, its trend is already very visible. It's like somewhere around like that 1.5 to 2.5 lengths below benchmark. So it's like on the pivot point where it belongs. I look at the close. Yes, there was some softening in the 4 to 2. Maybe that's where we could find it, but there was a rebound. It doesn't have to improve enormously, Ralphie, but I definitely feel that it's at least going to go past the 3.1 prior PB and put it strongly in the mix, and it can handle ground conditions.
Well, what gives you that confidence about the ground conditions? It's probably one heavy track run was this track and distance this time last year.
Well, I want to go back to the Ipswich run, Ralphie.
Okay.
All the way back in 2024. Okay, the rules come up virtually -7. But if I look at that, the WTI was 8.7, Ralphie, at 1,100 metres.
That's the wet track indicator, yep.
Yeah, so I feel that this is where it is now. I know it's had a couple of heavy starts. One of them was first up, 1,200 metres. I don't know if the horse was right. Look at the massive slow down the middle. That couldn't work for you. It didn't produce any type of WTI, but I ignored that. Then we had a 1,400 metre run, Ralphie. So I parked that and said, it's probably unreasonable for me to sit there and say you got no chance of handling it. I'm saying, okay, if it was bottomless heavy 10, I wouldn't bet anyway then, Ralphie, right? But realistically, I feel we're going to be in that slow range. And the horse is going to be fine. It's going to be able to get through it. And it's going to be parked in a good position in terms of the first half of the race.
So let's get to Napoleonic, the other 3-year-old colt who's deep in the market, and J-Mac's chosen to ride it. Now, J-Mac hasn't ridden it since last spring. He's had 3 rides on it for 3 wins, a dominant Moonee Valley win. First up, ran second to the Superstar Attempted, ran second to Ninja, so it's all good form, and then only 1.6 lengths behind Jolly Star in a Group 1 at Randwick. Given a 70-day freshen, what have you seen from the barrier trials, and what's your level of confidence about it performing tomorrow?
Yeah, well, if you have a look at that recent barrier trial at Canterbury, pretty solid, Ralphy. That indicator, first and foremost, inside the sort of top handful for the whole day. Absolutely loved the way the horse closed out, particularly over the last 400 metres, plus 5.9. There was genuine race simulation from the 600 to the finish line as well. All positives, no negatives. And then looking at just the raw figure, in terms of IBR, 1.4 and the raw IBR adjusted around 2.2 below. That sort of gives you the insight to say, well, we've got a horse that's going to turn up and be, I'm not going to say absolutely bulletproof because of the ground condition, but if it was a good track, expect the big run. In other words, I wouldn't be looking at conditioning being an issue, and it's going to absolutely test at least it's plus a half. Could it go all the way to 1.9 plus 2? I'm not so sure, because we have to factor in that there's going to be some zap. You're going to get zapped in terms of the ground condition, and that might work against this horse because the last trial was a little while ago.
Yeah. So rounding off your top 4 is Brisbane. I always say, look at the filter of the horse that's been set for the Group 1 race when we do these previews, and it is such a good filter. This one hasn't been set for this race, but it was dynamic last week, and they were so happy with it, they've chosen the quick backup. And with the ground conditions, 3-year-olds on a quick backup would be no negative. And this time last year, he looked a superstar in the making, the way he just obliterated the opposition at the Gold Coast on a very heavy ground. So I think he ticks the box there. And what also interests me here is the 3 favourites, James McDonald and Zach Purton and Ethan Brown, who's been riding in Hong Kong. So with the Whirlpool in play, this might be the one that spat out to a decent price each way. How do you assess Brisbane on the quick backup?
First of all, that last run on the Gold Coast was, I don't know, maybe not just me, maybe others as well. We finally got to see probably what the stable's been very aware of, where this horse's true capabilities lie. I mean, that sprint over the last 400 was just electric. Plus 7.1. It absolutely put the hammer down. Strong over the last 200 metres. Mind you, the distribution of energy in that race as well wasn't really all fair, because if you look inside from the 8 to the 6 plus 1.8, 6 to the 4 minus 1, that's a 2.8 length reduction in speed, mismanagement of energy, not because of the rider. It was just the way that track played. You got into a scenario where you had to slow. That didn't work in your favour. Yes, it's a top performance in terms of plus 1.8, but it's young. I feel this horse looks like it can take one more step. Is it going to be tomorrow on the heavy ground? That's probably the only little part you've just got to say to yourself, well, can it do it on the heavy and take that next step and get into that 3 range? But this horse is ready to show that, and I can't fault the horse, and I haven't marked it that was the peaking run and it's going to go backwards. I actually felt there's still something more to come.
Nice. I wanted to hear that. To be honest, because as I said, I always look at the dynamic with these Whirlpool, and sometimes, mathematics say that you're not going to get many times that there's value because obviously there's a bigger takeout. But in this situation, when there's 3 world-class, well-known riders, this one might be the one that spat out with Tim Clark on it. Let's have a look at a couple others that are, I think, have got wet track credentials, I'll call it. Starting with Skybird. Now, bit of a non-event last start, but third in the TJ Smith on heavy ground, or effectively heavy ground. That sets her up. Can she rebound? And I suppose the question will be, if the wide lanes are in play, will be the starting point needed.
Well, you can get, those wide lanes are there. It's never easy, even though Doomben's extremely wide. You're going to lose ground. unless everybody's tracking well off the fence. At the moment, I don't see that happening. But of course, it's late in the day. Who knows what might happen? And it's too hard to crystal ball it right now. But just on pure data analytics and just assessing how this track plays, it's probably against you if you're going to try and get out in those deep lanes to get the advantage that you could get. The other part is I just felt, Ralphie, because I was really looking at this horse closely, I actually feel that it's a negative 21 days later staying at 12. I just didn't see it as a plus. I actually seen it as a negative for a few reasons. Number one, there's been no big giant sprint from this horse over the last 400 other than the very first up run at Randwick. It's been like dead set 50% of that sitting around that +2 to +3 range late last 400. It hasn't had to burn a lot of fuel early, sitting around 5-6 lengths below benchmark. And I just take a step back and said, just imagine this, Ralphie. You get to the 350 metre mark and Skybird and Jimmy are next to each other. Who's going to have the bigger kick? That's what I came down to. Yeah,
it's a pretty easy answer. All right, and what? Maybe it's a Stradbroke for this horse. 1400 is probably his wheelhouse, and he's second up 14 days. But I think Warnie's got a big race in him somehow because he's just a horse who's continuously was poorly ridden, and then last spring, finally, Mark Zara goes on, rides an absolute peach on Derby Day, gets the money there, wins the big prize money race at Pakenham. First up at Eagle Farm, I don't think he could have done much more, and I've got no personal problem about him on wet ground. What's your thoughts with Warnie tomorrow?
Yeah, his first up run was sound, Ralphie. What was really evident as well, the taper over the last 200 metres going 1.5 below benchmark, about a 1.7 length conditioning blowout, was a clear signal that the horse was going to get sharp improvement from that run. The challenge is it's 14 days later, definitely not flattened by the run or anything like that. He's staying at 12. Is that going to work for you here? Is it going to work for you? And does that make you hardened enough? Because I am looking for that, Ralphie. I'm looking for that hard, fit horse, not so much all speed. So I just sit there and say, Warnie, you look like you're genuinely half run behind. And even if you were stepping up and it was 1350, 1400 today, I still mark you half run behind.
So that sort of points to the Stradbroke for that horse. And just to finalise for multis only, he's $34. Can Zarastro get a soft lead and give a cheeky performance? I mean, he was beaten the nose by Jolly Star this time last year in the Kingsford Smith, and I don't think the ground's any concern. Yes, he's first up. He hasn't got that hard racing, but two big barrier trials leading in. Well,
if you have a look at that last barrier trial in the 7th to the 5th, Ralphie, just have a look in the platform there. There it is, minus 2.1. That's like sensational. Like you already know Golan's got this horse on point. Is it going to get the right setup up front? I'd say high probability that it's going to be very favourable for the horse in terms of how much energy it needs to burn through the first half, and it's not going to be huge. It's not going to need to go +5, 6, 7. It's that I don't believe that's going to happen. But if it did happen, then it would be the demise of the horse. It's a 7-year-old. I'm surprised that the trial was that good. That's the facts. The horse trialled sensationally. It's trialled as well as it ever has, and therefore the 7's just a number. Expect the big run.
Nice, $34. Okay, we'll round it off there. Talk business tomorrow. Let's have a look at the other legs in the quaddie as they land. And the race 6 is the Bright Shadow. The fillies and mares, 1,110 metres listed race there. The old truism in racing is big fields create a bit of pressure there. 14 runners. How are you expecting the pace to unfold?
Yeah, for sure, Ralphie. Again, a big field. I don't feel like it's super testing up front. I could only really genuinely find 3-4 horses that are going to want to try and sort themselves up in terms of where they need to be up front. And then I looked at where they were. Liquor is probably the one drawn really wide that's going to probably have to inject some additional pace. Possibly High Dubai, who's also drawn really deep. They might be the two that just create that little bit of artificial speed through that first few hundred metres. But realistically, I just feel it's going to be sort of bang on that benchmark, maybe +1, but I doubt it's going to be much faster than that despite the big field.
Okay, the on top is as far as the market is concerned is Nepo Baby from the team Archibald. You've got the Black Cloud as the most advantage at this stage.
Yeah, well, there's not much between the two of them, Ralphie. I've got them both like right up there in terms of where they need to sit. Well, the way I looked at it is like this. With the Black Cloud, I'm not a big fan of when you're having a certain cycle, but I've come across this interesting band with this one, and I like to look at the pattern. It is 56 days, so the horse has a level of freshness been created. When it bounced off that last 56 days, it produced a half length above benchmark, and then bounced into the negative. They stepped it up to 1110 metres. To me, it was a bit of a sideway run, or possibly giving an indicator that it might be done. But that 56 days from this stable, I just can't help but feel it's been freshened again. And therefore, there's that possibility that this horse can strike very aggressively and punch out maybe +0.5. Could be just benchmark, but somewhere near there is where I feel the horse is going to end up. My only little reservation was the heavy track. It's gotten through it, but I marked those tracks probably a bit on the lower side, not actually heavy. I sort of felt they were more like S5 type range and not a S7 H8. So that would be probably my only little caveat on the horse. But this stable, this trainer, rider, they're all got the right markings next to it. This horse, don't be surprised if it gets a big run here, especially drawn one. It's like the golden spot.
And that half length above benchmark run at Rare Week off 8 weeks was Natural Willa was on, and it was behind Salui, who absolutely windshield that day. Actually, it was a big front running performance, and Nash is back on here, so it adds to the merit of what you're saying there. Let's have a look at the favourite in Nepo Baby here on the quick backup. Soft track should be no issue either.
No, it shouldn't be any issue at all. The question will be: is that last run a peaking run? 0.7 above, but it's lightly raced. It was solid. Loved the way the horse closed out over the last 400 metres. There was no signals that gave me, maybe you're done. A lot of respect for this stable. They've just got to keep this horse together for another run, which is tomorrow. And there's a big probability this horse is going to run benchmark +0.5, which keeps you firmly in it. Ground conditions wise, that second at Randwick, probably again on that S6 range, Ralphie. Mind you, I'm actually forecasting myself personally that this track's a big chance of being in the slow range, not heavy when they start. Got to respect.
Yes. Yep, that adds merit there. Savagery Vibe, Rock Hard Fit, which is a tick. Handle Soft Ground, which is a tick. Probably likely to get the perfect run too from that low draw for Daniel Moore.
Yeah, I kept it in terms of you have to give respect. Why? Rock Hard Fit horse. And if the track is S7, H8 range, that's not going to work against you, even though normally I wouldn't favour these type of horses. But because of the setup of the ground conditions on the day, I am not going to rule it out. I just feel you rock hard fit. If it gets testing over the last few hundred metres, because there's going to be some good pace in the race, you could just still be there at the finish.
So a couple more to round off with. You've got Lonrose Queen in your top four. It's Team Munts. We learnt last year that there's a very good stable of targeting carnivals. They were on fire there. It's first up off 119 days between runs. Nice trial leading in. What's your assessment with Lonrose Queen?
Yeah, I thought the trial leading in was really good. I felt that the last 600 metres of that trial was absolute race simulation. You look at it, 6 to the 4.4 above, 4 to the 2, 1.2 above. Last 200 metres, very solid, plus 2.1. About as good as I've ever seen the horse trial, Ralphie. So I just felt that was like a big, big plus for this horse. Now, in terms of being fresh, are you better at 1,000 or 1,100 metres? That's a hard one to answer. Could you still get found out a little bit at the end because it's not 1,000 metres first up? But I'm expecting this horse to go to a new level and actually outperform what it did first up last campaign, despite the fact that it's 1,100.
And certainly, if you're taking a quad in, I'll make a case for this one, and you can tell me otherwise. But Osmar, I don't think the $6.50 around will last tomorrow with the Whirlpool in play and Zach Purden riding. I can't get out of my head, Vince, that you said how good its trial was on the 10th to Private Harry, and then that Hawkesbury track, and it'll be a bit of a theme when we go through some of these races. That Hawkesbury track was such a mess that some of these runs can probably be forgiven from a fortnight ago. Its run was sound in traffic, and it was on very firm ground, despite how Hawkesbury played. I think if she can bring her A game, she's going to be deep in the finish here, and she raced very well in Queensland this time last year.
Yeah, very true, Ralphie, and you're right about from that Hawkesbury. It was like a little bit of a lottery, like we've seen just with a couple of tracks over the last few weeks. That it's just wild about where you can come from and the way the riders were handling themselves on the day because of the way the track played. What is very clear with Osmar's performance was the last 200 metres conditioning blowout at 2.2 lengths is really all you have to look at. Is that horse is just going to be a big leaper off that run, and I reckon you can have a high level of confidence that it's going to absolutely smash its 1.7 below. Could it go benchmark plus a half? Well, it has gone past benchmark before. Just not sure if it's going to happen here right now, second up.
And one at odds, should you include Catch the Glory in your quaddie if you're taking one? Also from Hawkesbury.
First sign, rock hard fit. No question, that's a big positive for the horse. The second part is, when you look at that run at Hawkesbury, first two sections, it was sort of like nowhere, man, just holding its position in terms of pace, 3.1 below early, 3.3 in the middle. Good, decent last 400 metres, a plus 3.9. Got a solid run out of it, but didn't get any favours. Now, here we are on a wet track. The horse is definitely going to test its prior PB of 0.7. Can handle the ground conditions as well without too many hassles at all. I'm not saying it's it's going to be one that absolutely loves wet tracks. It's got a solid sort of +4 range type setup in terms of wet track indicators. It's there amongst the chances, Ralphie. It's drawn reasonably well. Wouldn't surprise me if it finished in the money.
Race 7 over 2,000 metres for the stayers here. Good little race. And a couple of horses that are deep in the market are come off seemingly nowhere runs, but I think there's a bit of a reason for them. Firstly, how do you expect the pace of this race to unfold over 2,000?
I feel it's going to be genuine from a staying perspective. I don't feel that they're going to be sitting up and crawling unless something adverse happens in terms of weather. Realistically, I'm expecting them to go -2, +2 ranges. High probability for me. Definitely more than 60%. Other than that, who does it help? It's definitely going to help horses that are going to be sitting 3 to 8 lengths off them. They are going to be in a prime position, especially on a wet ground, Ralph. You do want to conserve some energy over that last 800 metres, and if you've been able to do that and be in that strike zone, you're probably going to get the bonus out of it.
Well, speaking of Hawkesbury, as I just did in that previous race, the Hawkesbury Mile has Royal Supremacy that ran 13th at $17 and Middle Earth at $51 ran 9th. I think there's a strong case that can be made for both of them. When your IVR report came out and -1's the hurdle, Royal Supremacy easily meets that target, and now Mark Zara goes on.
I mean, not only did the horse still have a little bit of a taper over the last 200 metres off a -8 first section, you can't help but feel how much that horse is going to improve off that run. We're now stepping up to what I consider to be that sort of right distance range for this horse, somewhere near that 2,000 metres or beyond. Does have a rock solid 2.5 above benchmark. Is it going to happen tomorrow? I'm sitting there and saying no, but you might test the benchmark line second up, which is fantastic, and it's got the right person on board.
Got a heavy track win at Wyong when it was coming through the grades. What type of confidence have you got with it on wet ground?
The way I'm looking at it is WTI-wise, it's solid in the mid-5s, which for me is a pass mark. I cannot fault the horse personally on wet track, and I've stamped that we'll handle it and handle it well.
The stablemate Middle Earth, one of my favourites, Vince, for the $50 in the Melbourne Cup last year, running third. Would have been a bigger favourite if it nearly got there, but its run was more than sound first up at Hawkesbury, as we've discussed there. What type of confidence have you got with it onto the wet ground up to 2,000 metres? It seems a bridging run, but it might meet the class edge anyway.
Yeah, ground conditions is always going to be some sort of a challenge with this horse, but that last run, despite the fact that it was travelling almost 12 lengths below benchmark early, it was so solid over the last 600 metres and just kept building with plenty of steam. Last 200 metres plus 5, that for me on its own was like, they've got the horse like tuned up to the minute, and he's spot on in terms of going to have its best preparations so far. So I expect this horse to absolutely elevate 3-4 lengths off what it's done so far this campaign.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and then I was going to say, in terms of like where it is in the cycle, like third up, it also indicates to me that you're probably going to test that benchmark line, maybe plus a half.
Then we've got the true handicappers, if you like, with the weight drop there. If you're into that, go for it. Nelly Laylax definitely is a wet tracker that will probably get the perfect run on speed from the low draw for Ben Thompson. A bit of a jockey change there. Significant weight drop from last start on genuinely heavy ground. We don't look at the weight side of things, but I'm just saying the market certainly will. And how do you assess its chances tomorrow?
Yeah, you got to love that when everybody looks at weights. It's really nice. Sometimes it gives you some value. Sometimes. So with this horse here, Ralphy, my only reservation was this. It's a good horse. It handles the ground condition. It meets all those criteria. Now, that might be enough for this horse to get victory. And it was one of the main reasons why I'm respecting the horse. But I don't know if it can break benchmark. And I do feel you've got to have that ability to be able to do that. So unless we feel a few of the other horses are just completely inferior in the ground conditions, then I see this horse potentially running third, fourth, maybe second, but I'm not sure if it's going to be good enough to win unless the others falter in the ground conditions.
Is So You Are who beat it that day in the same category, class-wise?
Yeah, well, it is. The only difference is this horse has sort of pretty much gone close to benchmark. If you look back at that run at Doomben, October last year, 0.2 below, that I call that benchmark, Ralphie. So the horse has really got to that level and looks ready to run to that. What have the negatives been? The last two runs, there's been no speed. If they run at what I'm considering to be genuine tempo, the horse may get found out a little bit late because it's just potentially half run behind. Because to taper in the negative at that Eagle Farm run by around 1.9 lengths off a 15.5 lengths below benchmark, saying you still needed the run and you won, you're going to definitely improve for sure. But they might be hoping for a slightly softer tempo if they're going to get victory.
And if I take a quaddie or a multi, I'm not sure if I will, but if I do, I'll have Encoder in the race. What's your thoughts with Encoder's chance tomorrow?
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one with from the Freedom Boys. It's been up a long time, Ralphie. So it's definitely not going to have any problems in terms of being rock hard, conditioning-wise. Can it come back to sort of retest that figure from the Gold Coast back in January, the 0.2 above? Maybe it can do that. I can't knock the horse, Ralphie. It is one that could surprise and be there at the end. But how many horses can you have?
No, that's right. Absolutely. It looks like the Mar duos. One will talk business tomorrow. Last race there, the Whirlpool Rough Habit Plate. I can tell you what the Whirlpool will say. It'll say James McDonald will be a big last race avalanche, except if the Mar team think Accidental Bid is a freak. So it's lightly raced. Who knows there? Firstly, how are you expecting the pace of this race to unfold in the last race?
Big field, Ralphy. Again, probably enough horses to create some sort of tempo up front. I've marked it at even Stevens, somewhere around that benchmark. We might go slightly quicker, but because it's the last race of the card, it just depends if rain has fallen or not fallen. If it hasn't fallen, then they might go a bit faster. But if it has fallen, then they might go a bit slower. So I'm just sitting there say average tempo. The bandwidth is probably on the lower side, -3 on the higher side, maybe +1. But that's good. It's going to be a test. You need to be fit.
So Accidental Bid's got a bit of Russian Camelot about it. Obliterated its rivals at Pakenham, and then goes and as a throw at the stumps at stakes level. Russian Camelot got the run in the South Australian Derby and won it. Accidental Bid missed out on the run in the South Australian Derby, hence coming up to Queensland, looking no doubt for its black type win there. But what have you seen on the clock as far as what it's done at Pakenham in those runs?
Well, first of all, the WTI is the one that stood out from that last run, +7.3. You know the horse isn't going to have any issues handling the ground. Also, it is interesting, coming off that 10.5 lengths below benchmark, the mid-race squeeze was decent, 7.9. The ground made up the GMU 8.8. That's massive, Ralphie, like absolutely massive. And there was a little bit of a taper at the end. Even though, obviously, the horses had got the race well and truly won. The reality is, I can't help but feel the upsides there. And yeah, this is a horse that I also feel could get absolutely smashed in the markets tomorrow. If I'm reading it correctly, this horse will probably improve 3-4 lengths off that run.
Wow. All right. Well, take it on at your peril. So let's get to Providence. Now, we did a bit of a members bonus on this Providence. It was a big hit and run at its last start, and it said it's going to come to Queensland and it's going to be winning some races. Now, whether it's tomorrow or whether the Queensland Derby is its goal, or, as you say, maybe just Accidental Bid will be too good with too much upside. But how do you assess Providence's chances tomorrow?
I feel that this horse is like ready to run big tomorrow, potentially peaking. The question mark is, number one, that I looked at is, are you going to be able to handle the ground? Absolutely. Are you as good as Accidental Bid in the ground condition? I'd say right now there's not a lot between them, because if I go all the way back to the Ramwick back in May last year, the WTI was +5.9 on a bottomless track of -40. So I have no doubt, right, this horse has got more to come from a ground conditioning point of view than that. In terms of fitness, I actually feel it's got an edge on Accidental Bid if we're looking at fitness level. If the ground is testing, Ralphie, this horse is ready. The way it exploded over the last 600 metres in that last run was just so exciting. 6 to the 4 +2.5, 4 to the 2 +3.1, last 200 +3.6. Yes, it was off not a lot of speed. The beauty is, got to go to the second up run when it used heaps of fuel through the first two sections. That actually will bring itself forward and to the forefront tomorrow. To have that rounded off and then have two softer runs in terms of early tempo after that event brings you to your top. And what's the top? Well, I reckon we're going to be seeing a new PB. Because we've got another very smart horse, they could both end up running and breaking benchmark easily.
That strongly suggests that the market's going to absolutely smash these two horses. Now, they might dominate the race, but the one factor that I'm really interested in here is Soferado, because so Kyle Wilson-Taylor's actually ridden 5 winners in the past month or two, and so, but the Whirlpool won't want to touch Kyle Wilson-Taylor versus J Mac and this horse on the up, but maybe it'll spit out to a good price. That wet track run, 2 starts back in the Adrian Knox was pretty serious, then gets this insane tempo Oaks where it wasn't ready. So it won't have an issue fitness-wise, and it won't have an issue ground condition-wise. Can Soferrado be in the finish?
Why wouldn't it be in the finish? Absolutely, Ralphie. And it's WTI, and especially the way I'm expecting the track to be. 7.3 is every bit as good as the other two, so there's not going to be any issues there. That last run, probably in some ways, was a golden scenario if you're looking with the forward lens, not maybe golden on that day. You're going to come in to this race with the 35 days, going to keep some speed in your legs, and you're going to be very versatile. In other words, if there's pressure, you're going to be fine. If there's no pressure, you're going to be fine. So either way, everything sits well. I don't know if it's by design, Ralphie, from the Waller team, but they've definitely got all the elements set up. The only little reservation that I have with the horse, and this is again, which we can talk in more detail tomorrow, is when it comes to a betting proposition, where you're drawn, who your rider is, doesn't make life easier.
And I dare say with the Queensland Oaks in 2 weeks' time that it'll be the ride it quiet, let it finish off situation. So the market's always going to let you on there. But I just wanted to put the case there for it. And we can, as you said, talk business tomorrow. There's some interesting races earlier in the day and hopefully some value opportunities. And I should underline that the Whirlpool only starts from races 6. So it's the quaddy legs, the Whirlpool. So if we can find one at some nice prices, we won't get obliterated in the market there. Hopefully we find the winners to go with it. Starting with race 5, the mile. It's a good race, Vince. And Wellwall, I like Wellwall. What's your thoughts with Wellwall?
If it repeats what it did last start, how are they going to beat it? Like, seriously, how will they beat it? Yeah, how? And with J-Mac on board, the boys must be laughing to get that rider. And a horse that's in top form, and loves the wet.
Eats it.
It's impossible to fault. Impossible.
Well, it looks like there's an opportunity, and part of that is that Code Atlantic's deep in the market at the moment. Now, well, the reason I say at the moment, well, I'm just talking facts, obviously, but it's sort of high 3s. Wellwall's mid 4s. I can see this being a big switch around. The rider of Code Atlantic, you got an apprentice rider who's got poor stats at the moment. Now, it was just beaten last start. It's got a level of ability. It won the Seymour Cup, and clearly wet ground will be no issue. But has it got the class of Wellwall?
One of the good things is I like the fact that when we introduced this race matrix, I don't know, a few seasons ago now. I've been operating with it for quite some time. There are 2 runs, despite the fact that they've been below benchmark in terms of adjusted, in terms of the way the races have trended. You can look at the Seymour run back in October last year, where it was 3.5 below benchmark, but the actual trend has indicated about 0.3 above. There's also that Sandown Hillside where we've scored the horse 2.6 lengths below benchmark, and the trend has come out to be around half above. So that was enough for me to say that the horse is capable of running that benchmark line, but it's going to have to do better than that to win. That's not going to be enough. I feel that this horse, not that I like talking a lot about prices, is completely mispriced. How on earth that horse is favourite is a joke, personally. I get it. The horse is capable and can be very competitive. And if you're looking at it the way I like to look at it from a betting point of view, this is a moneymaker type horse. But it's no star, and I don't believe it deserves to be favourite.
Blinded by the light, first up run was just first class, and it ran second Idle Fire and then won the Group 1. Last start was an absolute coma job from the inside barrier. It was continuously in traffic. That won't be an issue tomorrow from the outside barrier. I think Mark Lambourne, the Sydney analyst, calls this the golden switch from the inside to the outside. Plenty of room. On wet track, though, it has to be a bit of a query for mine, Vince, on that Flemington run back in at the end of the Carnival.
I'm going to help you here, Ralphy. Go all the way back to Bendigo. September. Go and have
obliterate the opposition.
The raw figures, -20. WTI, 8.5. Not going to be an issue. This is the one that's going to test Waywell.
So you're sort of saying, just on this point, you're sort of saying it was the 2,000 metres rather than the wet track at Flemington.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
So be confident, Ralphie. That if you like the horse, could you test Weewall? Absolutely, because there's no ceiling on this horse. At least we do have a ceiling with Weewall, but there's not one with this horse. What negative could I find? If you want to put it down as a negative, is maybe what's the rider going to do 15 early? That would be something that you would think about, because when you look at the setup of this horse typically likes to sit about 4 lengths off the leader. Now, if it's looking for that 3-4 lengths off the leader, it might find itself in a jam and get trapped. And I don't believe that they'll go more forward. They'll probably go a little bit further back. And you do have to stay in the zone. You're not going to be able to win this race if you're 8 off them. So it's just a matter of, can the rider slot in and still be inside that 6-length zone approaching the 800. If that happens, it's the big test against Weywall.
We should include War Eternal too. This horse, Dark, and he just hasn't seen genuinely wet ground this time in, and there's nothing wrong with its Hawkesbury run. We've said that the track was a bit of a mess, but it chased really hard there. It finally gets its right conditions, and this time last year in the winter, it was just eating the mud.
Yeah, and it's one of these things, and one of the reasons why typically when I see this, I like to try and throw them under the bus and get them out of my zone in terms of being a threat. Ralphie, we're just going to come back to your words. Rock hard fit, wet ground conditions makes a big difference. If you're hard and fit, if there's pressure and some challenges in the race in terms of how much you have to exert energy-wise, it's not going to be a problem for the horse because it's rock hard fit. And the last start performance probably gave it a little bit of a lifeline, going 9.9 lengths below benchmark early and putting this ripping last 400. What that meant for me, when it actually was a PB for the horse, was you did no work for 2/3 of the race. And then you stormed in with one last 400 metres, which means you didn't have a gut buster. You probably got a run left and you're rock hard fit.
I think we've got some clarity in that race now. Race 4 on the program here. I'll just get a bit of clarity here via your what we call it. We're calling it the write-up final edition, but we're going to adjust it further for tomorrow. So really, as your overview here with Vane Torix, you've got it as one of the standouts there. Just low confidence, though, in the actual race itself. So with Vane Torix, it comes into the race at sort of mid to sort of low 2 odds, but very, very hard to fault, Vince.
It is, and the only reason why I've marked it low is we don't really know, especially early in the day, if you slow 7 H8, how will you handle it? That's it. In terms of the capacity and the talent, capability, 1200 looks like gold. Like that last run. If you were looking for any other reason on how much more you could improve also, I mean, look at this setup. 2.2 lengths below benchmark early. 6.1 below in the mid. So you had a 4-length slowdown. It doesn't work for horses, Ralphie, especially young ones. And how did you still end up producing a 5.6 above last 400? It just says to me, you got massive upside. If you handle the ground conditions, you won't just be winning, you'll be killing them.
It's a good either-or situation. We don't need to talk about the other side because it comes down to its capacity and the ground, not its talent. Race 3. Oh, I so want to be on Burma Star, and then I looked at Ryan Maloney's stats. They're not good at the moment. So give me some clarity here with race 3. There's 4 horses deep in the market. They're the top 4 in the numbers. Burma Star, Hidden Achievement, Fabulones, Estremo. I'll put Burma Star in Sizzlers after its Hawkesbury run. Its Melbourne Cup Day win was sound. Tells me that its Caulfield failure wasn't due to the ground conditions. It just wasn't right on the day because that Melbourne Cup Day, there was definitely a soft track. Maybe a heavy track could be a different situation, but it won at Warwick Farm on the heavy ground. You've got Fabulones, Estremo, Burma Star, Hidden Achievement. What's your overview with this race?
It's a good race, Ralphie. It is a really good race. And the other thing that I like is putting the rider aside for a moment, because for me, rider engagement's all about where you're going to position it in your betting armour. Like, in other words, if you were wanting to, let's say you're really keen on this horse, you would have to give it a slight downgrade because of the rider. Not because the rider's no good, it's just your risk appetite has to be reduced.
Yes.
But now, let's look at the pluses. Wet track. Just go to that Warwick Farm run where it won. Minus 22 Raws, 6.3 WTI. That's not going to be a problem. Number 2, that run last start at Hawkesbury, half a length above benchmark. I'm still trying to understand how that happened, because that's not the horse. The horse likes to typically sit at a softer tempo than that. Here it is going above benchmark. A little bit of a slowdown, but mind you, between the 6 and the 4, it was a 3-length impact. Rebounded hard. Strong last 200 with a plus 2.9. 1350 metres is perfect. Drawn 10, I reckon it's not too bad for this rider, drawn 10. It doesn't have to be too pretty in terms of just ride it like it normally likes to be ridden. 3 to 5 lengths off that lead speed, find your spot, and wait for the moment to come in the home straight, because you do have some great straight line speed.
So you're agreeing with the case for it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But again, the caveat is, and you rightfully pointed out, from a rider point of view, it's not one that you can say, okay, if I thought this was the horse to beat, I couldn't go in and say you're an A-grade bet.
Let's quickly touch on the first 2 races here. In race 2, Our Queen is the solid favourite there from Calicoe. This is almost the theme of the day with the J-Mac v Zach Purton show here, and also the barriers. Our Queen the widest, Calicoe the inside.
Yeah. It's a hard one, Ralphie, on how you handle this particular race. I'm not too sure, Ralphie, about how this is going to all play out, and why I'm saying this is this. It's a big field. There's good tempo. They might run a lot faster. It's early in the day. The rain may not have even come. The track might be well and truly inside a slow 7, and that tempo could only heighten. So that bothers me. Now, is that good or bad for J-Mac? Well, I don't see it as a disadvantage. The reality is, it's just the quality of the horse, where you sit and how much can you cope with. Technically, I don't expect it to run up to what it did back at Moonee Valley, all the way in 25.4 above. It could go somewhere near that, maybe benchmark. The signal last start for me was, you didn't use a lot of fuel early. You were very strong late. You're peaking. Okay, here you are. Maybe if everything turns out perfectly, you could run benchmark and you're dangerous.
Sounds like a race you won't be playing in. Let's get to the first race, though. It's an interesting race because, it's the J-Mac v Zach Purton situation there. You got Cosmo Centaurus, rock hard fit, can handle the wet track. Midnight Dynamite, terrific return first up.
Yeah, this looks like a really good race, and I was asking myself, is it potentially a betting race? It could be, because I don't feel like there's a lot of chances in this race. There's only 3 or 4 chances, and they like to be in a forward position. So the headaches for me was, I looked at Midnight Dynamite as the first call for me. Could I consider this as a genuine betting proposition? Number 1, drawn perfectly. Love the way it resumed first up with a minus 1.7. Just outside of the top 10 for the day. That was a plus for me. Can you handle the ground conditions? I'm confident you can handle the ground condition just based off that Randwick run back in November, Ralphie, where you had the raw figures on the day 11.7 below. This horse returned to WTI plus 4.2 and won the race at 1,300 metres. So I felt that wasn't going to be an issue. I also feel that second up 1,350 isn't a problem either. Will J-Mac lead or stalk? If J-Mac stalks, he has a tendency to do. Not that he can't handle himself up front. I feel that if he can find that luxury of sitting and trying to control the race from that position, so in other words, he can let rip when he wants to, the opportunity's there. Now, there's a little bit of design factor. If they're running 4 to 6 lengths below benchmark, you probably want to have your money on this horse at the 600. because its last 400 metres off that type of tempo is going to be sensational. If they're running a lot faster, that zip might not be there, and it might just be a bit more one-paced, and therefore becomes a little bit more challenging for the horse and vulnerable.
With Cosmo?
Now, with Cosmo, Zach's right. He'd be pretty happy because I feel he's on a good horse, and he's definitely a big threat. That run 2 starts back at Eagle Farm put the writing on the wall for me. That you're pretty much on or near that benchmark line. Even last start victory at Eagle Farm was sound. Bad race shape for the horse and still won. It's not a horse that has a giant sprint, but it definitely has a sprint that's very similar to Midnight Dynamite. Probably can't afford to have too much of a head start in terms of, when you get to that last 400, Zach wouldn't want to be too far behind the other runner. Just a little bit of a caveat around how well are you going to handle the wet ground conditions. That's all.
All right, that's given us a real good depth for tomorrow. Hopefully you enjoy the listen. We will talk business tomorrow with the 10-15 minute update podcast. You've got lots to read there with the write-ups there from Vince. So really appreciate you being a customer of Year Round Carnival. Look forward to talking business tomorrow.